Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, Pearson?
Good, good. Question first off before we get started. I just want to make sure
Yeah,
I'm going to pronounce your name right. So, how do I pronounce your name?
it's Dia,
Dia. Okay.
and last name is Noor.
Dia Noor. All right, cool.
Yeah,
I've never
yeah,
I've never heard or seen that before, so I was curious.
yeah. No, you got it. Wow, look at you, man. You have a lot of stuff behind you.
Yeah, it's a basement, so it's kind of just like the collection of our house is all in one place.
I love it. I
And then
love
I
it.
got I got my bike set up and then my treadmill, so
Oh, that's awesome.
got
Very,
to get
very
it
cool.
done.
I love it. I love it. Well, Pearson, I'll make one suggestion, and I always love to make this before all my podcasts.
Okay.
Can we start recording right away?
Yeah, it's already recording.
Oh, heavenly, heavenly. Because it's funny. A lot of times we end up just like shooting, watching curse if we're already recording, but we end up like having small talk, and the next thing you know, it's been like 15 minutes, and there's when like some gold stuff comes out, and then it's like, oh, let's start recording now, and it's like, can you just repeat everything you just said? And it just never comes out the same.
Right,
So
right. So
I'm,
you've been on a couple episodes for podcasts before then.
oh
Oh,
a
cool.
few, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
I'm
like
pretty fresh into the podcast. I haven't been doing it for very long actually.
cool. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time, out of your day. I'm assuming you got to be a busy guy.
No, no, I got nothing going on.
Oh, okay.
I'm
All right. Well, I guess so. Kind of the way I was going to do it was we'll chat for a little bit. It's been a minute, but do you still have the email that I sent you about the couple of things I was going to ask about?
do you want me to pull it up real quick?
You don't have to. I was going to just run over it right now.
Yeah, let's go over it.
Okay. So I had mentioned that I wanted to ask about kind of the company culture, a little bit
Yep.
about like what goes into making bikes. And I guess I don't really care for like the specifics of like, where you source the metal from and all that, but
Yeah.
kind of like an overview. And then if
Yeah.
you guys are involved in any races, stuff like that,
Yeah, for sure.
partnerships, do you guys sponsor athletes directly? Because the reason I found you guys is actually through Infinite Nutrition.
Yeah.
So they partner with you. There's a sponsorship back and forth. I'm not exactly
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's kind of how we got to here.
Cool. I
And
can touch on all that.
sweet. Okay, we'll just kind of play it by ear. So my podcast, it's really like free form.
Yeah.
Like there's all the stuff I listed, but pretty much we're just gonna jump around and and
Let's do it.
whatever happens, happens.
I love it.
Okay, so let me run. I'll do my intro, and then I'll throw it to you, and you can kind of do your little introduce yourself, and we'll just jump into it.
Got it. Let's do it.
Okay. Hey guys, this is the Just Go For It podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. Today is a special day. We have special guest Dia Noor, CEO of Ventum Bikes, Ventum Racing. Super excited for this. As usual, the best way to get a hold of me is on Instagram. Just Go For It podcast, all one word. Try to keep the episode short. This one's going to be a little different because it's pretty fun. So I'll toss it over to Dia and let him get started and introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his company.
Thanks so much, Pearson. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be short because I like to talk a lot. So you
Sweet.
got that going against you. Yeah. I'm Dia Noor. I'm as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Ventum. I've been with Ventum since its inception. We incorporated. Oh my God, I can't even believe that I missed our birthday. It was November 19th, 2014. That is when
Oh,
we first started the company. So just over 6 years ago.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
still pretty fresh.
Yeah, 6 years, right? I mean, long enough to say, hey, we're not going anywhere, but yeah, but still got some ways ahead of us, right? We don't have like the pedigree of like a 60 or 100-year-old company, but definitely. So it's been a good road so far. But started in Miami. That's actually where the company in Miami Beach, more specifically,
Okay.
and we were there until 2019. We opened a satellite office in Boulder, Colorado
Okay.
in 18, and then in 19 we moved all of headquarters and shut down all the satellite offices, and we're now right outside of Park City in Utah. So that's kind of a little brief geographical
Okay.
little narrative of where we are today. But yeah, and then in 2014 is obviously is where we started. We went on sale, like our first bike was on Q4 2015. And
Okay.
Ventum started as a triathlon brand, right? And so for the folks listening that don't hadn't heard from us or heard of us before, we started as a non-draft legal triathlon bicycle, and the flagship bike is called the Ventum One. And the whole idea behind the Ventum One was that we felt that triathlon had reached a critical mass, right? Other manufacturers were taking UCI legal frames and slapping on a TT front end, for better or worse, and calling that their triathlon bike. Now, the issue with that is, from a manufacturing perspective and cost perspective, it makes sense. But from the performance side of things, the UCI legal frame is not the fastest frame you can make, not even close, right? Because and non-draft legal racing is dominated by Ironman and Challenge. Ironman obviously being a bit bigger, but they don't fall under the UCI code. So why are we following this rule that doesn't apply in this sport? The reason was there was never critical mass. So you can't just make a product for triathletes because there weren't enough of them, right?
Okay.
And so you'll just take something that you already make for cyclists and tweak it. So we saw that, and we essentially were one of the very first, if not the first, non-traditional bike frame, right? And we call them non-traditional because they're not traditional looking. So that's kind of the nomenclature for it. And so we built the Ventum One from the ground up in the wind tunnel. We threw everything out. I obviously pulled up the Ironman rule book because there are some rules, like you can't have fairings, you can't have, and those are you have to adhere to. But nothing, we started with a blank piece of paper, and we just said what we want to do. Our mission is to build the world's fastest triathlon bike. So we spent a lot more time than most in the wind tunnel. We got very, very creative, and that's where the Ventum One came out of. And the Ventum One was also the first bike to be approved by the ITU. So ITU long course, since it's non-drafting, they use triathlon bikes.
Okay.
And then quickly got adopted, right? And the idea was not just to be fast in the wind tunnel, but be practical, because the people involved in the project were triathletes. They realized, there are certain things that you need. And one of them is hydration. Now, hydration, as you probably know, bottles and bottle cages slow you down. They create drag.
Yeah.
So they not only create drag by you carrying them, but they create drag when you're accessing them. So when you want to drink, you get out of your position, whether it's behind your saddle or if it's on the down tube, you're exposing, you're changing your position, you're creating drag, accessing your hydration. That's already slowing you down.
Yeah.
So what we did with the Ventum One is we have an integrated hydration that sits in the top tube, and it actually makes the bike faster. So if you could do a whole Ironman without drinking a sip of water, more power to you. But if you could do it, you would leave the bottle empty, because the bottle makes the bike more aerodynamic. And so we took a negative and turned it into a positive, right? And so these are some of the things that we wanted to look at, that I don't think other manufacturers were doing that, right? Other manufacturers were testing their bikes naked in the wind tunnel and coming out with wind tunnel data, but nobody rides an Ironman without a bento box, without hydration, without all these bolt-ons, and those things slow you down. So we really took a very holistic approach. And so that's where it started, is on the triathlon side with the Ventum One. And I can tell you a little bit more about also, obviously we've expanded models, but maybe we want to stick around a little bit and talk about triathlon.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Actually, that was going to be one of my questions. If you guys, well, I guess not necessarily where you started, but like what was your specialty in bikes? But if you started with a triathlon, I assume that's going to be kind of like your specialty is the triathlon bikes and TT bikes.
And that's a very interesting question. Yes, we certainly started in triathlon. It was, and I say was, our specialty.
Okay.
We still feel, obviously, we are at the pinnacle of the sport, and that in both on the technology side, on the performance side, and the partnership side. We're the official bike of Ironman globally, which no other bike company has ever been the official global bike company. We sponsor, dozens of teams and individual professional triathletes. So we're super heavy in triathlon, but we then, since its inception, we've always said we're going to have different verticals and different products. That was always the plan.
Okay.
We started in triathlon because that's what a lot of our backgrounds was in. So a lot of the engineers were triathletes, a lot of We had a lot of ties to triathlon, but we also chose triathlon because it was a much more competitive market and a much smaller market. So if we could make it in a niche market that's already saturated, then we will be able to make it in other verticals. So then the very next bike was the Ventum NS1, and that is a pure road racing machine. I mean, UCI legal, use it, in any of the sanctioned events. And to answer your question, I think one of the challenges we had early on is the adoption rate by cyclists. So we had a lot of triathletes buying the road bike as a secondary bike, but we had a bit of an uphill battle to kind of educate the market that no, this is not a road bike made by triathletes. This is truly a cyclist's bike, a road cyclist bike. And we got a little bit lucky on that front just because the product spoke for itself. Once we got through the initial hurdle of kind of like the brand recognition association with triathlon, a lot of cyclists started demoing it. We got a lot of endorsements from some really influential cyclists, and people jumped on it and loved it. And that's what helped the NS1 more than anything else. It was such a strong product on its own. So it got us out of that, quote, for lack of a better word, the stigma that we were a triathlon brand.
Okay. I guess I could see that with if you started in triathlons and you are so close knit with Ironman and triathlons and all these triathletes are buying your bikes, I could see how that could kind of, like you said, for lack of a better term, become a stigma, like you're stuck in it. But yeah, I've heard of the Ventum S1 before I actually knew about your triathlon bikes. Yeah, so I've heard of it and I've seen it around.
Excellent. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And that's the thing too, is also on the cycling part, is the cycling sector. It's different from triathlon where, we sponsor individuals because triathlon is an individual sport. So you can get, Lauren Brandon and Cody Beals and so Kevin Collington, and these are some of our pros. But on the cycling side, you have a couple options. You can either partner up with a retired cyclist, or if it's an active cyclist that's competing, well, you have to sponsor the team. So barrier of, right? Like you can't just ride whatever you want. So,
right.
So, yeah. So like, for example, to get a world tour team, which is one of our goals, and we're slowly but surely getting to it. It's a big commitment. It's a huge commitment that requires a lot of resources, and not just financial resources, but logistical, troops on the ground. And so it is a bit of a larger obstacle and to get into that market when you're looking at it strictly from a sponsorship point of view. So,
okay.
But on the flip side of that, the road market is a lot bigger than the tri market. I mean, exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
And so, this obviously you're going to have more sales on the roadside. You're going to have more interest on the roadside, and that's been nice. That's been nice, and especially during this pandemic, obviously, which is something we should probably touch on a little bit later. But the roadside has really, really picked up. And then finally, last but not least, is our gravel bike, the Ventum GS1.
Yeah, that just came out, right?
That just came out. Nice. And if you saw the state of our warehouse right now, because we had a lot more pre-orders than we expected. And so and so the bikes landed, and now, we assemble everything here in Utah. So, and we are the most customizable bike company in the world, right? We have 60,000 different combinations.
Oh, wow.
Right, exactly, which is crazy. It's just a bit too much, but which means no two bikes are alike, right? Yeah. You can customize it. Obviously, the color, but besides like the aesthetics, we're talking like different crank lengths, different cassette sizes, different chain ring sizes, different stem sizes, bar width, so on and so forth. The sky's the limit, really. Different seat posts. So, if you looked at the state of our warehouse right now, you'd be a little shocked. But we're getting through it. This is a good problem to have. But the GS1 is a performance gravel bike, and expect us to make a huge push in gravel in 2021. Okay. It's the fastest growing segment in cycling, and we certainly want to give it its attention that it deserves. So that's right now our lineup, and we're not done, right? We're not done. I mean, there are some natural there's a natural progression. I should be careful what I say. There's a natural progression, and I have been known, by the way, to like leak everything and announce things months ahead of time because I just get too into a podcast. So I have to be careful. I've been warned.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a natural progression here that we're following, and yeah. So we'll see what the future holds. But we're definitely not done. This is not where we want to stop. So
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys are full gas over there on all fronts, really just try to get to expand and to get out there.
absolutely, and that's the thing is, talking about the pandemic has really has benefited a lot of companies, has created a lot of challenges as well. But we grow year to year between 40 and 50% every year.
Nice.
And yeah, and to do that in the pandemic was challenging, and we've done it again, which is exciting. But and I'm sure you've seen it, you've read it in the papers, you've seen everybody like, oh, the bike companies are killing it. The pandemic, you can't buy a bike anywhere, and that's a little misleading. And the reason I
Okay.
would say that's a little misleading is that, well, we are a luxury performance brand, right? So we are the Ferraris and Lamborghinis of the world. Um, I would say the vast impact on the supply was on $800 bikes or below, right? So your bikes at REI or Dick's Sporting or online or whatnot, those bikes got a very big uptick, right? But the brands such as ours and all the top brands that are out there, they had a different story to tell, and essentially, I mean, I'm gonna be as open as I can be, but when the pandemic occurred, a lot of the big players in this industry cut their POs with their factories. So they said, "There's a pandemic coming. We need to cut production by 75%." Right?
Whoa.
Yeah. And then, so in turn, the components manufacturers, let's use Shimano because that's a very real example. Shimano goes, "Oh my God, all my bike manufacturers are cutting their POs by 75%. I better also cut my internal production that I would sell to the world that's not allocated to bikes, to bike manufacturers by a significant amount." So it was a double whammy. And then poof, the market just blew up. So what happened is every dealer or if you're direct consumer like we are, yes, we sold out of bikes very, very quickly of what we had inventory on hand. Now we were lucky. We are well stocked with our frames, but then the biggest sticking point became the supply chain of components. So Shimano is completely backed up. I am hearing stories, and I won't say the names of the brand, but the delivery dates for any bikes for some of the biggest brands that are pushed into June 2021. So they're not even going to see a bike for another 6 months. So a lot of the brands have nothing to sell, right? And so yes, so I just want to give you the full story, because it's interesting how if you just read the papers or you don't really dive into it, it's very easy to believe that the bike industry, are just a bunch of millionaires. But in reality, there was definitely an uptick. There's definitely interest. It was on the lower end more than the upper end, and on the upper end, supply chain was so disrupted that we weren't really able to capitalize as much as we would love to. And also the cancellations of events has also significantly hurt, specifically on the triathlon side, right?
Right. Yeah.
On the road side, people like to go ride, group rides, solo rides. Usually when you buy a triathlon bike, it's because you're training for a triathlon event. And if there are no events on the horizon, you may not be buying a bike anytime soon.
Yeah.
So,
I think actually personally, that's kind of why I'm on the fence about buying a triathlon bike.
mhm.
There's not a guarantee there's going to be any events anytime soon. I think like in 2021, some organizers are talking about starting to schedule events, but I don't think anything is really set quite yet in stone. So I think it's unfortunate. I think what I'll end up doing is I'll end up pulling the trigger on having a bike so that I can train for an event and just be ready for an event. If it happens, awesome. If not, I'll just keep training.
No, and I think that's a good strategy. I mean, look, I probably have a bit more visibility than most, but obviously I don't, it all depends on the virus. Given how the timing of the vaccine and whatnot, and the eagerness of people to want to race and people to want to put on race events. I would expect that there will be a pretty heavy race schedule in Q3 and Q4, and even on the second half of Q2.
Okay.
As vaccine dependent. But
Right. Of course.
yeah, I do. Q1, I wouldn't hold your breath. So.
Yeah. I think that's just kind of just where we are with it. And it sucks, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's unprecedented. And you know how sometimes you get, I like to call them the new normal, right? The new normal, like human beings are very adaptable, right? And we have been since our creation. Uh, you can put a lot of stress on humans, and that stress becomes their new normal. And then you put more stress on, whatever the stress may be. And we just get used to it. But this is so monumental. Like there is no new normal. Like we are now 11 months into this pandemic or more, you know, depending, you know, in Asia, obviously, but it still bewilders me and it still leaves me in awe more, you know, just as much as it did in February, March. I can't get this to be the new normal yet. Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting phenomenon, but
And it just
I don't think
it keeps going.
yeah, it does. But I don't think we'll ever see anything like this in our lifetime. I mean, the last time a pandemic, even not even close to this, but I guess this was, you know, it was in 1918, right? So
Yeah.
100 years ago. So yeah, crazy time to be on this planet.
Yeah, it's because I've got 3 kids. It's funny because my wife and I joked about it, like what we're living through right now, they're gonna read about in history books, you know,
Uh-huh.
in the next like 10 years when they're in high school. And it'll be so weird because I'm curious to see how it's gonna be written, like because we lived it. You know, what's the story that they're gonna tell the rest of, you know, the next generations? How
Well,
close will it be?
do you know what it's gonna feel like? It's gonna feel like I'll give you a very not similar, not nearly the same magnitude, but when we hear about the 70s and the gas shortage, right? And
Yeah,
I hear my parents like, "Oh yeah, no, there's only one day a week we were allowed to go get gas, and you'd line up the gas station, and it would be a half a day to 6 to 8 hours of waiting around in queue, and yeah, only once a week." You know, I think that's when I used to hear those stories. I'm like, "Oh wow, that's crazy," but I couldn't really put myself there. I can now, right? Like
yeah.
now I can. Now I'm like, I can imagine like, wait a minute. No. I only have gas. I can only put gas once a week. I sat in my car for 8 hours to fill up. I woke up at 2 a.m. Like now I can understand it. But I think that's how it's going to be told. It's unless you live through one of these, you know, interesting times, let's call them.
Yeah.
It's hard to really relate, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something like that where we'll feel it and we'll know it. But if you're younger at that point in time, it's just not going to feel real.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I also think we all had very, very different experiences depending on where we lived, right?
Yeah.
I live in Utah. I used to live in Miami Beach, but when we moved, obviously I moved with the company. But Utah, my life was, I mean, I was one of the very, very, very lucky ones where there was such little disruption to my life, if any, if any. I mean, life was normal here. We're still going out, we're hiking, we're running, we're biking, we were canoeing, kayaking. Yeah, you know, we not in the first half of the year, you didn't even have to wear a mask to go to the grocery store, which is a little crazy. But you know, now you wear a mask going to the grocery store. But unlike say in New York or California, where I mean, life got very, very different, right? You're used to
Yeah.
going out to eat a lot. You're used to using the subway. You're used to going to the office. You're used to go see plays. You used to, I mean, everything, you know, all of that. Your life as you know it was completely different. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it seemed like, well, in those places, like in New York, for example, when it hit, it was a quick change. Their quality of life, everything changed right away.
Drastically. Absolutely
Yeah.
right. You're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, those stay at home orders, and you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
us, because
So,
I'm in Michigan, it was a
okay.
pretty slow transition. Like we had heard about it, and then masks became kind of like it wasn't mandated, it wasn't required. It was a suggestion, like you should wear it. So some people did, some people didn't, and then it kind of progressively built and built and built until there was a brief lockdown where you could only go to the store at certain times, and certain groups could go at certain times. now it's a little bit more lax, but it was interesting how like it was normal. Okay, we got to a point and now we're kind of coming back down.
Yeah.
But it was that new normal kept seeming like it was over here and we hadn't gotten there yet, you know?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. So, oh, I mean, there's some silver linings, right? And the silver linings, at least for me, and I traveled more than most during this. In fact, I traveled quite a bit, but I also was reminded of the simple things that make me happy.
Yeah.
I love to ride my bike. I love to. I started reaching out. I mean, the days of Zoom, right? I started reaching out to people I hadn't reached out in maybe a decade, and so it was nice. It was nice. It was a nice little time to reflect on what is important, what is not important. I never had such low credit card bills the first 3 months because I wasn't doing anything. Like I wasn't spending my money anywhere. I was like, wait, is this right? I think I owe you more money. This is weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like you realize, like, look, we don't have to go out as much as we do. We don't have to travel and take all these extravagant trips as much as we want to. It was nice. It was pleasant.
It
So
was.
yeah, I mean, look, that was my experience. I also understand, and I have to be very sensitive here that that's not everybody's experience.
Right.
I was also lucky enough that I had, knock on wood, I didn't have somebody who was really close to me pass away from it, or, again. So
Yeah.
obviously, if I did, I would be speaking very, very differently, and I have to be aware of that.
It would be a very different situation. That's something actually that I mention a lot in my podcast, that everyone independently has a different version of hard. So like, and it's
Yeah,
relative to that person. So like, I mean, you went through something and I went through something. We're both going to perceive it differently, and that's going to dictate like our storytelling of that event. So
absolutely. That's
like
actually
what,
really well said.
yeah, what you went through for COVID is quite similar to what I went through. It was pretty easy. It's pretty mild. We didn't do a whole lot. When the lockdown first hit, actually, I just spent a bunch of time on Zwift. I was just
Yeah,
riding my bike like every day. And I mean, in that sense, it was really great for like training and my physicality. And I met a bunch of people and connected with a bunch of different people. So that was kind of like, I chose to look at it in the sense of this is me advancing my fitness career, so to say, versus like,
I
oh,
mean,
I'm stuck at home.
to your point, that is exactly what I did. I mean, I got into the best shape of my life because I'm on the road 90% of the year, and I don't
Okay.
usually travel with my bike. And I usually, I'm in hotels, I'm traveling, I'm not eating well. So I did exactly that. I started throwing these CEO challenges, and one week I challenged people, and it was all in Zwift, right? And one week I challenged people to ride as many miles as they could in a week.
Okay.
Of course, I'm very competitive, so I had to win every. And there was like 500 to 1,000 people that joined.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, yeah. So it was serious, and so I did. I rode 1,000 miles in one week. Then
Oh
the
my
next week,
gosh.
yeah. Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal. And then there was this guy in Costa Rica who would match me like mile for mile. And so what we would do is we'd post the results because we had a Strava group that you had to join, right? And
Okay.
we'd post the results every night at like 6:30 p.m. And I don't know what this guy was doing. He was either like watching me or this guy was like scientific about it. And he would beat me like every day by 1 mile.
Oh,
So like
man.
I'd be like 776 miles and he'd be like 777. I'm like, oh my God. So we started playing mind games against one another. And then on the last day, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning and I jumped on a bike and it ends at 6. So I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and from 4:30 in the morning to 6 p.m., I did not leave that saddle.
Oh,
I just sat there and threw in like a 280-mile day. Um,
jeez.
but um, but I got really fit. And then the next week we did a CEO challenge to see who could climb the most and stuff like that. And
Okay.
and then so to your point, I got actually super, super fit. I went down to the Grand Canyon and ran rim to rim to rim, just 50
Okay.
miles and 24,000 feet of elevation change. So yeah, to your point, it was really, really nice to have the time to get fit. But
Okay.
then you had nowhere to show it off, right? Because you can't. There were no races. So.
Right. So actually, that brings up, I have a good question. So in that, you sound like you're a really, really fit CEO of a company. Like you run a company, but you're also still in really great shape.
You know what? I'm really good endurance shape.
Okay.
Yes, I would argue that I'm one of the fitter CEOs. I come from like an endurance running background. Like for example, I just turned 40 a month or so ago, and I run my birthday every year. So I was in the city. I was actually in New York, and I ran around Manhattan for 40 miles. And endurance sports are my life, really, except swimming. I don't swim. I do not like to swim.
Okay.
I can't. It's just, you know, when I live by the water, I'll swim. Like, I think that would have been a much different story. I can't get myself to go into a pool, especially in the winter, and just stare at that black line. I can't do it. Same reason why I don't do treadmills either. I just
Okay.
can't do it.
Yeah, no,
I
I
mean,
get it.
it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, I try to be fit, but I'm not always fit, and that's the funny thing. Like, I fluctuate like crazy. You know, I think a year and a half ago I was probably 40 pounds heavier, right?
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I used
It
to always
changes.
joke around. It does. I mean, I used to always joke around. I was like, the heavier I am, the more I'm working. So, like, if I'm really heavy, you should buy our bikes. If I'm super, if I'm super fit, then I'm not in the office, and I would be careful. And I'm joking,
That's
but
a good
yeah, I
joke.
think, yeah. Well, hopefully, it doesn't cost any sales.
Oh, no. I don't. My podcast doesn't have that kind of reach. Don't worry.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. I'm working on it. So I guess with that, so you said you don't swim. Now, is that like I know you said you just don't like to swim, don't like staring at the black line in the pool. Do you compete in triathlons, or do you do triathlon?
I'll do a relay.
Okay.
That's no problem at all. But no, I don't compete like in a triathlon by myself because of that swim portion. And I think I'm using it as an excuse. Like, will I ever do it? Absolutely, I should. There's no reason why I wouldn't. I have all the tools, and
Yeah.
you know, both. So yes, I will do it. But you know, for the longest time, especially when I was traveling, trying to build this business, you know, my best friend were my running shoes, right? And they're so easy to travel with, and they were always in my backpack. So even if my luggage got lost, I had my running shoes.
Yeah.
And it happened so many times in Asia where my luggage didn't show up, and I had my running shoes and a pair of shorts and t-shirts. So it's just so much easier for me. Like, I'm just so familiar with running and cycling.
Okay.
That's just always my go-to. So especially when I'm traveling, it's running. If I'm home, it's running and cycling. It's my comfort place.
It's your happy
I don't,
place.
yeah, it really is. And I don't necessarily think swimming is my happy place.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
naturally, yeah, it takes a back seat.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty close to where you are. I love to ride my bike. I love to run.
Yeah.
Swimming, I don't think I ever gave swimming a fair chance in the sense that I never trained it. And I did my first triathlon in 2019, and the sport as a whole, loved it, right?
Yeah.
It was a blast. The people are awesome. It's kind of like everyone's
yeah.
already your family and they want to just help you, and it's great. But the swim. I'm not a fan. I know if I tried and I trained it, I could do well. But like, if I'm just gonna go jump in the pool right now or jump out in the water, it's gonna be a rough show.
Yeah. No, so we are very much alike in that front. We are very much alike.
It's interesting because my goal is to go to Kona eventually. And like, I guess not just to go to Kona just to get there. I want to go to Kona to do well. You know, I don't think I'll podium or like win, but I want to be close to the top. You know, that's definitely a good goal. Of mine. Yeah.
What triathlon did you do last year in 19?
The Grand Rapids Triathlon.
Okay.
I don't think there's a prize purse for that one. I think that's not connected or somehow. I'm not sure, but it's like an entry level, just try it out type of thing. So I did the sprint version. I think so. The swim was only 600 meters.
Yeah,
that's not long, and
you can get through that.
I made it through, but I was rethinking it halfway through. Like, why am I doing this? But since then, I've spent so much time on Zwift and so much time running that like my run and cycle game have really, really improved. So I'm not saying that's enough to cancel out the swim, but I got some work to do.
Yeah. No, but you know what? You're not alone. That's probably the most difficult comment, you know, I get is, hey, my running and my biking coming along, my swimming is what's behind. That's usually so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of people look at it and think, well, the race doesn't start until we get to the bike. So I'll get to the swim, but yeah.
That's right. That's actually right.
So you mentioned earlier that you you do sponsor, or you work with either retired cyclists or triathlon and triathletes. So you do sponsor athletes directly, or is it more of like a broader kind of like with Infinite, where it's you partner with the company?
We do both, right? So
Okay.
we have teams like Infinite, Baco Squad, the Team MV. So we do a lot of teams, Endurance Nation, but we also have individuals. So
Okay.
and I think I'd mentioned them earlier, like on top of my head, we have Lauren Brandon, we
Yeah.
have Kevin Collington, and those kind of caliber people. Cody Beals from Canada. We've got Jackson Laundry, and then we got a couple Olympians that are, well, hopefully going to the Olympics. They were meant to go to the Olympics, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen next year if they have to requalify. But they qualified for the 2020 Olympics. But Matt McEnroy, Morgan Pearson as well. So yeah, we do individuals. We do sponsor individuals, but also work with teams as well. And I think that's important. And then
Yeah.
that's on the tri side. We will be expanding on the gravel. We will
Okay.
do the exact same. We'll have individuals as well as teams. And on the road side, really my goal is a world tour team.
Okay.
That's what I'm aiming at. That's what we're working towards. And that's probably, maybe a couple years away.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet. So
Yeah, you had
yeah.
mentioned it's a whole different ball game, just as far
Oh
as like
yeah.
resources and finances and logistics and all that goes into it, which I wasn't aware of any of that. I just assumed it's like just give them bikes, they just do their thing. But
Oh no. Because you give them bikes, but you've got obviously a financial commitment. But when you say you give them bikes, I can tell you that one of the highest. Well, I should be careful what I say.
uh-oh.
One of the world, yeah. One of the world tour teams, they have a commitment of 200 bikes, right?
Holy
So
cow.
their sponsor gives them 200 complete bikes. That's a lot of bikes, right?
That is, yeah.
Yeah, road bikes, TT bikes, and whatnot. But then that bike sponsor is also on the ground at all the events and logistics with cars and mechanics. The team also has mechanics, but
Yeah.
and then if somebody is winning the tour and has a yellow jersey, they may request a yellow bike, and you better paint a yellow bike and overnight that to France, wherever So it definitely takes a lot of logistics and a lot of resources. There's no doubt about it. So,
Wow.
and given everything that we're doing, I don't think that sponsoring a world tour team today would be the right approach. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds like you want to definitely not just be ready for that, but you want to have a capacity to both support that volume of bikes, but continue your normal daily business.
Correct.
Because I think on that level, if you get a pro level team, that puts your name even further out there. So now you have to provide the bikes to the team, but then also you're on that platform. More people are going to be shopping your bikes, and you got to go further and further.
And that's exactly right. So it's not just enough to be able to cover the team and whatnot, but you got to be able to activate. There's no sense in paying all this money and doing all this hard work and not piggyback a strong marketing campaign next to it and activate this amazing asset.
Yeah.
So to your point, yes, it is very, very intensive, but we're getting there.
We're getting there. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize, and actually I mentioned this the same thing when I had the interview with Infinite, that they've only been in business for just a handful of years, and it's a relatively small company still. I didn't realize that you guys have only been in business for 6 years.
6 years, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, we've done a lot in 6 years, and I got to remind myself of that, right? Because a lot of our competitors have been around for 40 and 50 years.
Right.
And more. I mean, I can think of even the Italian brands. Some of these Italian brands have been there for almost 100 years, which is crazy.
Jeez.
So yeah, they've got that history. So yeah, but there's also a reason why we were able to make it so quickly is because we brought a different point of view, a different approach, right? And sometimes when you have these legacy systems and you've been doing it the same way for so long, it becomes a little stagnant, becomes a little stale, and allows for somebody who can think creatively, who can bring in some different technologies to come and take some market share. So
yeah, I think personally too, because you mentioned the big legacy brands, and I guess not to call anybody out, or I don't want to name specific names because I don't draw attention to it. But anyway, so everyone knows those brands. They have the same bikes that look pretty much the same. They're doing about the same thing as before. but like, so your the Ventum One, your triathlon bike, that doesn't look like any other bike out there.
That's correct. Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think, yeah, that in itself, it's like, it's a different bike. It's new. It's built. It's, you know, purpose specific. And I think that is what's going to separate you guys. And it is separating you guys.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And honestly, that's where it was actually a bit more challenging on the road side because our sandbox of creativity got a lot smaller because we had to follow the UCI rules, right?
Yeah.
So we couldn't go as crazy as we wanted to. But so what we ended up doing is more on our manufacturing techniques and how we were able to overhaul those to make us stand out. And really, the whole point of the NS1 was to be a lightweight aero bike because the industry likes to make you buy two bikes: a climbing bike with traditional round tubes,
Yeah.
and an aero bike that's going to be slightly heavier but more aerodynamic. And we know why the industry does this because why I'd like to sell you two bikes versus one, right?
Right.
And so we were the first to market with a lightweight aero bike, an all-purpose bike that can do both very, very well. Since then, a very big manufacturer just last month released their version of a lightweight aero bike. So,
Yeah.
imitation is the best form of flattery. So that's nice. So at least we know we were on the right track. But yeah, it was a bit harder to try to stand out on the road side than it was on the tri side.
I could see that. And I, like I said, again, too, with the tri side, you did very, very well.
Well,
That
thank
bike
you.
looks
Thank
awesome.
you.
So
I didn't really do it myself, but thank you. There was a huge team
team effort.
that
Yeah.
deserves yes, but I'll take the credit. No worries. Thank you.
You're welcome. Wow, we've actually touched on like just about all my notes. I
All
did have
right.
one more question. So usually,
Yes.
so my podcast, it falls in the personal development kind of category. The way I break it down is I've got Tuesdays is kind of your fitness training specific. I don't have a nutrition block quite yet because I don't know enough. Working on it. And then
Yeah.
Thursdays
Yeah.
is my like personal development. Like, this is how you get through difficult things. This is kind of like how you can develop yourself. Um, so what I'm actually going to start doing, I did it with Infinite, I'm going to do it with you also, is
All
do you
right.
have something that you'd like to share, like a personal development tip or something, not specific to business, but because you are a CEO, you have a demanding schedule and a demanding day. Do you have something that you could add or, you know, provide to my listeners that's going to kind of like that get you through the day type of thing?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God, I've got loads. So uh, let me start by saying that one thing I learned that at whatever level, even the highest level, Jeff Bezos, wherever, whoever you want to pick as somebody on that level, they still don't know exactly what they're doing, right? And so, and it's true. It's true. Like I don't know what I'm doing, half the time, right? And I'm still figuring it out. And I think there's this very easy narrative to fall into for people who haven't made it or haven't tried or aren't an entrepreneur or are maybe unhappy as to where they are in life to look at somebody like that and say, oh my God, they have it all figured out. I wish how did they figure it out? What's wrong with me? And that's not true because, we are all as clueless as each other when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And so, some of us can hide it better than others. Some of us are more eloquent. So it sounds different, but like, don't look at these guys and think that they have it all figured out because they don't. And I'll be proof of that. So the other thing I would say is that, and this is maybe a little corny, but you have to believe in yourself so hard. There are so many moments where this company shook me to my core, right? To my core, where there was adversity that I didn't know how I was going to overcome. Talk about the new normal.
Yeah.
My problems today make my problems of 3 years ago like look like a walk in the park. Honestly, talk about the new normal. But
Okay.
I had to really find a sense of self-confidence over the last 5 years that I've never called upon before. So I know it sounds cheesy, like believe in yourself and trust yourself and whatnot, but it's true. It's true. And then similarly to racing, and you could probably relate to that. Call it let's say it's a half marathon, and you're at mile 10, and all you want to do is quit, right? All you want to do is stop at the side of that road and just stop because you have maxed out and you're like, you have dug as deep as you can and you just don't let yourself. And next thing you know, you break through, you get to that finish line, and the sense of satisfaction is enormous. And I would say it's the same thing with business. Like there's so many moments where, this is early on, but still applies where, I mean, I was so desperate where like, I don't know if I'm going to make payroll next week. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or that or this. There's not, and you just want to quit. You really do. The struggle is just too much to take. And if you just endure a little bit more, you do break through to the other side. And so these are kind of 3 lessons that I've learned that I always remind myself of. So hopefully that helps others as well.
No, that's great. Those are all great points. And that's some quality stuff right there.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate that. I'm sure my listeners are going to appreciate that too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And
so
by the way, on that front,
okay.
I also pride myself as being the most approachable CEO ever. If you DM me on Instagram, you will get an answer. And so anybody has any specific questions, whether it's bike related or life related or anything, I urge anyone to please reach out to me, and let's chat. Because I love that. That's the side of my work that I don't even consider work. That's fun, and I get to meet the most interesting people. So
yeah, that's I was gonna mention that at some point probably, but you seem very, very laid back. Like you don't seem like I'm sure everyone has their typical CEO in their mind that's very like the very proper kind of very everything's structured and they're not so laid back. But you seem just like I'm CEO.
I'm pretty. Yeah, I don't fit the CEO mold. There's no doubt about it. I've got big hair. I'm always joking around. I'm playing pranks on my staff on an hourly basis. I have a lot of fun. I definitely have that kind of a jovial side of me. But yeah, there's definitely some serious moments as well. But
of course, yeah, yeah. I imagine that if being as carefree as you are, you have to have the serious moments. Not, I wouldn't say equally, like if you're equally as serious as you are as carefree, but there's got to be balance.
There is 100%. There is. And I think the dark times that I have endured have allowed me to, be more lighthearted and realize that, okay, what's the worst? How much worse can it get? You've gone through the worst of the worst. You're still here. Yeah. Everything's fine. So I take things a lot easier than I used to. That's very, very true.
Nice. Well, I didn't really have anything else I wanted to ask about. You did almost all the talking.
I told you I'd love to talk.
That's great.
All day.
Yeah. The way I usually kind of round things out, like if anyone wants to reach out to you, you already mentioned if they want to send you a message on Instagram that you're going to get back to them. So I guess what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is Instagram pretty much the best way?
Yeah. I mean, obviously if it's bike related, if you want to buy a bike, I would urge you to go to, ventumracing.com, reach out to our support at Ventum Racing, or click the concierge or live chat or the phone call. They'll probably be able to help you more.
Okay.
If you're ready, like for an order. But Instagram is really a good way to reach me, because I'm always on the go, and I feel like email got so heavy. It's not even heavy. I don't know what happened, but now with WhatsApp and Instagram, like I look at my email, and it's like email is like for the computer. You know what I mean? Like I have to sit down and block some time for email. While Instagram, I'm always on the go, and so it's Dia10, it's DIAA10, and you can pretty much ask me anything, and I promise you, sometimes I'll get some very interesting questions. So
I bet.
But But if you want to talk about bikes or racing or strategy or social life, whatever, I'm in. I don't care. I love it.
Actually, you just mentioned getting a hold of support. Dovetailing off what you said earlier about your bikes being so customizable with like 60,000 different variations of a bike configuration. Do you guys do bike fittings? Like, how does someone know how to make that right combination for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we do have a lot of help online, but we also fit you with your measurements. So we're able to get you. Now, I would say it's always a good idea, whether you buy a bike in store or online, wherever, to go and get an actual proper fit afterwards, because that makes a world of a difference, right? It really does. But yeah, but no, our customer service team here is very capable. We have Tuesday meetings, all hands on deck, and every Tuesday I start the meeting in the exact same manner. I say we're not a bike company that has a customer service department. We are a customer service company that happens to be selling bikes today. And that's
Oh,
something that's ingrained. Yeah. So we're a customer service company. And that's the reason why we are direct to consumer, is because we get to control the entire sales cycle, right? From pre-sale to post-service. Like, we are there with you. And there's no finger pointing. So what happens a lot with the dealers, you've got some amazing independent bike shops and you've got some that aren't so amazing, honestly. And so your experience can't be controlled. You're buying Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and you really are. I mean, these bikes get very expensive, right?
yeah.
At that level, and I feel that the customer experience needs to match that price tag. You don't go to the Lamborghini showroom and see a part-time college guy who doesn't really know much about the vehicle trying to sell you on it, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and so that's not something that you would expect. So why is that okay to do when you're buying a $16,000 bike? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? And actually, our bikes don't get that expensive, but you get my point. Like
I get your point. Yeah.
a Trek Madone would be 16. So like, I just didn't feel like the sales process reflected the quality and the price tag of these machines. So that's why we wanted to be able to control the whole cycle. And then there's no finger pointing either. So we have lifetime warranties on all our bikes, and it's a true lifetime warranty. Others have 3, 4, 6 year warranties, but what effectively happens is, and let's not use a brand, but let's just say brand A, you're riding this brand A bike, and it happens, the carbon fiber layup was maybe not exactly where it needed to be, and you get a crack on your top tube. Great. Then you go, or on your bottom bracket, that makes it easier. Then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're going to go back to your bike shop and say, hey, I have a crack, and the bike shop is going to call the manufacturer, and the manufacturer's going, oh no, you installed the crank incorrectly. You put too much pressure on the bottom bracket, and that's why it cracked. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the dealer is going to blame the manufacturer. The manufacturer is going to blame the dealer, and they'll go on like that forever. And who suffers? The consumer.
Yeah.
And that's not right. So there is no finger pointing. If there's something wrong, we're not perfect. If we do something wrong, or something is not up to the quality that we stand by, there's only one person to blame. It's us. So, right, which is great, because then I can fix it immediately.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say that the experience at Ventum is unlike any other typical traditional kind of bike purchase process.
And that sounds very customer centered, a very, very, consumer centered, which I think is the right way to do a company, especially a customer service company.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Hopefully, so far so good. So
Yeah.
we're doing something right.
Yeah. I've actually never had a proper bike fitting.
You need to. I'll tell
I,
you, it is so important. It is so important. I mean, I can't tell you. Like, I'll just give you a perfect example. Like, I need to go get a fit. In fact, I'm actually going to be going to Boulder the next month or so, because there's a fitter there I really, really like. And I'm going to bring my road bike, my TT bike, and my gravel bike. And I'm going to say, hey, we're going to spend the entire day together, because it's usually 4 or 5 hours per bike. But in the meantime, I've been tweaking my position just ever so slightly, just by myself. I changed my seat, my saddle. I changed it by 1.5 degrees. Just nothing, right? 1.5 degrees.
yeah.
It made a world of a difference for me.
Okay.
That's 1.5 degrees. And just as a small example, how a proper fit can really complement a bike and can enhance your riding experience. Exponentially. There's no doubt about it. So yeah. So
Okay. Yeah.
please go get a fit.
Well, I
Go get a
have,
fit.
so the bike behind me was like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, a $300 bike off Amazon.
Yeah.
So I didn't really put a lot of thought
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would wait. Because fits are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I want to do is, at some point, I want to get one of the Ventum tri bikes.
Yeah.
I haven't landed on which one yet, because they all range in price, of course. But when I get to that point, I definitely want to get fitted for that bike. Like, if I'm going to spend that much money on a bike, I want to make sure it fits me to the T and I'm comfortable, because I want to be on it for, hours on end. So
Absolutely. No, and that's the right way to do it. And that's
yeah.
the thing, look, our tri range starts at 2,600 and it goes up to, I believe, almost 16,000, 15,000 and change. So it's a big range, but
Yeah.
2,600 is still a ton of money.
Yeah.
And if you're going to spend 2,600 on something like that, you gotta gotta make sure that you're comfortable. It's the right size. It's the right fit. And you're right. The fit is critical, and that's when you want to go get a fit. I wouldn't suggest getting a fit on a more entry level bike. It may not be worth it.
Right. Yeah.
Invest it in the bike instead of in the fit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because
And I
fits can
think
be expensive.
it's true. I had multiple conversations with my wife about, like, obviously with, wife, family, kids, balancing your finances can get really tricky. So
Yeah.
it's trying to determine, like, okay, am I at the point where I have enough ability to warrant purchasing a bike that costs that much to receive the benefit for that sport? This is a ton of fun.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I love doing this, and
Yeah.
I'm honored that you asked me to be on, and I really hope that you ask me again, and we get to chat in a year or so from now, and I can tell you all the great or not so great things that we've done.
And I can tell you by that point if I've progressed in my triathlon journey or if I took a left turn and went somewhere else.
I love it. Well, there you go. That's a date. A year from now, we'll
All
touch
right.
base.
All right. Thanks you guys for tuning into the show today. This was the special guest, Dia Nora. It was a wonderful episode. We're going to do this again sometime soon. Best way to get a hold of him, he said, was going through Venom Support if you wanted to get a bike or if you wanted to reach out to him directly. He's on Instagram. If you guys have any questions, that's also the best way to get a hold of me is through Instagram. Just Go For It podcast, all one word. I check it pretty often. Send me a message. I'll get back to you. If you have questions about future episodes or about this episode. And that's pretty much the show. This was by far my longest episode, and I had a ton of fun.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you again, and let's catch up soon.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
And that's it. Well, that's the episode.
All right. That was fun, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Good. I'm glad. And I'm serious, man. Anytime you want me back on, I'm happy to come on. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to you. I'll have to find you on Instagram, and then we'll just kind of stay in touch like that.
Sounds great.
All
Cool. And if you need anything, just reach out.
I will for sure. And hopefully I'll be getting to one of those Venom bikes at some point soon. So
let me know when you're ready.
All right. Thanks.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See ya.
Bye, Kirsten.
Bye.
Bye.